If I'm moving slower, or I'm less responsive, or I'm not quite as animated, what's wrong? What's wrong? It's like, oh, you're mad, or you're not interested, or you're bored. It's like, no, I'm just really tired. This is my tired body language, not my bored body language. Those are two things that get confused. Bored versus tired, and then mad versus sad.
In all of the good times and even the trials, through tears and through laughter, yeah, I know that I'll smile when I think of you. Smile for the things you do. Smile, God gave me you. You are a reason I smile.
This is Behind Our Smiles.
Pursuing connection.
And finding joy.
Even in the struggle. Welcome back to another episode of the Behind Our Smiles Marriage Podcast. We are Joe and Tara Buchanan.
Yeah, and we're so glad that you're here. And one of our favorite features on the podcast is when we get to share what makes you smile about your husband or wife. And by the way, you can share with us by simply emailing us, Tara, T-A-R-A, at behindoursmiles.com. Today it is Todd sharing about his wife, JC. He said, my wife and I have a nightly handshake ritual. It started as a good night kiss, and now it's about a 1-minute fraternity-like handshake that makes me laugh every time and every night before I go to bed.
Now, his wife, when we asked her what makes her smile about her husband, she actually had the same answer. She says, our nightly handshake. And she said, you have to see it to believe it. So I'm like, that made me laugh so hard, but it made me think of this idea that they're not really saying anything. Maybe they're saying goodnight, but this little routine they have between them says a lot, right? Yeah. I mean, you're not saying anything, but that little routine you do each night of the handshake or the fist bump, it's just got to say so much about how they value each other and value their marriage.
That's what we're talking about today, right?
Yes.
What our body language says.
First, I want to ask you, do you want to learn a fraternity-like handshake that we can instill in our marriage? I just want to put it out there.
No, I think, no.
I want bump, bump, shoot, wah, shoot.
I think over the years we've had a little something here or there, but never anything like that. Yeah.
I don't know. I just think this could be good for our marriage. I've had
them with my friends. I've had them with even my boys at times, but not necessarily in our marriage.
But it could be a good idea.
It could be fun. It could be fun, though.
You're supposed to say that's a great idea.
That's a great idea.
Now, we're talking about nonverbal communication today, and a lot of our kids have gone through speech class many times through high school. And this last year, when my son was in speech class, they had a whole assignment just to learn nonverbal communication, because they're saying when you're giving a speech, it's not just learning the right words to say or organizing your paragraphs. What you do with your hands and your face are all part of the speech. So one of the assignments they had was to go to a public place. So we went to a coffee shop and sit there for an hour and observe everyone in the coffee shop's nonverbal communication. So not eavesdrop on conversations, just observe. And so I went with them, and I'm like, this kind of is interesting, because we had no other agenda except to look at the different pairings. So we had 2 young girls in this seat, that we had a group of 4 men at this table, and we had a husband and wife couple here, and just trying to guess, what's the nature of this conversation? And pretty soon we were pretty good. Okay, these people are business people. They're talking about business. These 2 girls seem to be really close friends because they keep doing this. And I think that girl is not happy with that guy. So it's just one of those things that watching the public, Joe, I know you enjoy this too a little bit, and trying to guess what's going on behind the scenes. Do you ever find yourself doing that?
Or noticing
people
that
watching?
You think something's happening, and so you have to observe a little bit longer to see, is that true? Is this really what's happening? But and the experts, when you're talking about body language, the experts do say that about 70% of our communication, what we hear in communication actually is presented through our body language. So I don't know how it makes you feel, but only about 30% of what I hear are your words.
Yeah, so it's like when you're watching a YouTube video or a video, we have a lot of that these days, and you turn the volume down and you go, what is this person talking about? And you do kind of know, I have an idea of what they're talking about. They're really impassioned about this topic, or they're really upset, and you do that and you realize, there's a lot you figure out from just watching and not listening to the words.
I don't remember what the series was at church one time, but I remember we watched a video with one soundtrack.
Yes.
And then we rewatched it with a scary soundtrack, and how that whole video didn't change at all, but the whole thing changed depending on what.
And that's kind of like the tone, right? Our tones that come through are part of nonverbal. So I think it's looking at our marriage and saying, okay, we know that 70% of our communication is nonverbal. And we know that communication is a big deal in marriage.
Yeah.
Right? That's what they all say. It's communicate. And obviously we want to do our words very well. But I think we can also be very aware of what is our body language saying. Are we good at this or not good body language communicators? Because I think it takes practice to learn to express and read body language, even though we kind of grow up doing it naturally.
And there have been
Just
many
inside.
times where I've misread or been misread because I'm communicating, especially when we get tired or something, we're not, or we're not really listening. You can kind of tell. And yeah.
And then body language is also kind of cultural. So in one setting over here, this kind of gesture or this kind of look means this. And then you might have said, no, in my family or in my school, this kind of gesture meant that. So there's also that multicultural thing. And I think especially for you and I, Joe, growing up in very different homes, I think we have a different experience with body language and how you express what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So we've had that happen.
Yeah. And sometimes you don't realize you're communicating what you're communicating.
Yes.
So sometimes you're tired, but you look mad or
Exactly. Why are you mad at me? It's like, I'm just tired.
Yes.
But I'm like, but that face and that posture. So let's talk about looking at the coffee shop, right? So we're in the coffee shop and we're seeing a guy and a girl sit down. What are those signs that we know that we're like, okay, he likes her? What are you watching? What are you seeing in your mind if I say, oh yeah, look at that, he likes her?
Well, is there a touch, right? Hands are touching. There's a smile.
Gentle touch.
There's a listening. There's an attentiveness to the conversation. There's a closeness usually. So you're usually a little bit closer. Eye contact's a big one.
A lot of nodding.
A lot of nodding, yeah.
Like everything you
typically
say, I
yes,
love.
Right? Nodding, yes.
Yep. But yeah, the soft touch, like maybe not even like touching yet, but almost like leaning towards the other person.
Yeah.
Even if they're not at the point of like touching a hand yet, they might be like leaning toward that intense eye focus. So I think in our marriage, that's also a good thing to say. How do we communicate? Like, I'm really into you. Like, I'm listening. I don't know if we have that as much as we maybe could have, like this idea of, okay, I'm just stopping my whole world to nod and look at you, right? But it feels so good to be in that situation where we're like, I think he's into me.
Right. Or where you have the undivided attention of someone else. And again, it's easy when you're dating because you are really into it. You're not really pretending on that level. And then when you kind of have to be more intentional as you grow in your relationship. But yeah, and there are times when you've said to me, I really need you to listen, right? Or I could tell from your body language,
yes.
I really need to listen right here.
Exactly. And then there's the negative things, which is body language that says you're bored.
Yeah.
But body language for bored, obviously there's just a less movement or there's shifting and fidgeting. I guess I fidget a lot as it is. So maybe you think I'm bored when I'm not bored.
I think when you don't make eye contact, looks like you're thinking about something else.
Yeah.
You're not like, I'll ask a question and then there's a little bit of space between the
And I think boredom is
like,
almost like a lack. Something like as a teacher, sometimes if I'm in front of a group of students and I think when I'm bored, it's like the lack of raising their hand, the lack of looking at our face or being involved. They're just everywhere but where we're at.
And as a public speaker, I think it can be challenging because it's easy to misread the crowd too. You can see different reactions going on. And what from doing public speaking, I've learned when I'm sitting in front of a public speaker to really pay attention, to give my nods, to allow my body language to communicate that he's connecting or she's connecting with me. Because it's easy to look bored even when you're not bored.
And
it's
some
easy
people,
to look
when they're
distracted.
Bored, when they're intensely paying attention, they could look bored. But really, they're like keeping their whole body still so that they can take it in.
Yeah.
And so you think to yourself, they're just sitting there, right? They're just sitting there. Like, no, they're sitting there because they're trying to focus everything on listening. So that's a great point. Like, we can be thinking we're sending one message and we're sending another one.
So I think for me, being a public speaker at times, I've learned how, but it also has taught me how one-on-one, when you're with somebody, to make sure that you are attentive and to make sure that you are listening and not looking bored.
So if it's a podcast or a video,
yeah,
we have a lot of body language happening in our podcast because we're trying to communicate with each other while we record. So I do a lot of nodding, right? I'm doing a lot of nodding to go like, yes, I like what you're saying. And then occasionally I do the, cut on the neck.
Yeah.
We don't need to go
you're going
there.
a direction. Or hey, I've got an idea. You know, I
Yes,
really want
raise
to,
your hand.
don't wrap this thought up. I've got an idea.
Raise your hand. And then Joe's got his little sign language for slow down,
Yes.
slow down.
don't
And
know.
I have the one for like, wrap it up,
You're
babe.
right.
Wrap
Yes.
it up.
So yeah, those are things that happen. It would be really funny if there were a video attached with that. You know, we'd have to learn different body languages to
Well, we
communicate
naturally
that.
do still talk with
Yeah.
our bodies, whether we're public speaking on a stage, but even if we're with a friend, our hands really do help us emphasize and say what we mean. So it is a tool that God gives us to express ourselves better, to make sure better words should match our body language.
Well, it goes back to what you said earlier. I really do. If you're watching a public speaker on a video, you can tell a lot of what's happening by the body language, especially the hands. And if you've never done that, it's kind of a very fun exercise to watch how much we actually use our hands. If a public speaker was speaking and the hands were in the pocket the whole time, that would not be as pleasant for those that are listening to that.
Well, I remember studying some of that and thinking about public speaking and just communication, that the hands are so important for showing like openness and showing trustworthiness. Because the idea is that if I show you my hands, my empty hands, there's an idea of me saying, I'm not a threat. I'm not holding a weapon. I'm not going to surprise you with a punch, right? There's a vulnerability there. This is all I've got. Here are my hands. If I hide my hands, it's a less trusting position. Like, you don't know what I'm really doing with my hands behind my back. I could be grabbing a knife or hidden. So they said, like, to help grow trust in relationships, when you have your hands out, it subconsciously says, I'm not a threat to you. Like, you can trust me, versus hands crossed, hiding, in front of your chest is like the opposite. Like, I don't trust you.
I wonder how many times we've said one thing, but our body language says
Yes.
completely different. And I know that we've been in with our kids and each other. Sleep is one of them. And when you're sleepy, right?
Yes.
You kind of look. I'm not sleepy,
not
but the body
tired.
language is definitely
Not tired.
saying yes, you are.
Here's the other big one for marriage, though, is, are you mad at me?
Yeah.
So we have a whole episode about that a long time ago. I think number 3 or 4, right away we did, are you mad at me? So there's some kind of body language that I'm sending you, or to a husband or a wife in particular, that you say, she's mad at me. What's my body language if I'm mad at you?
Well, you're quiet. You're
quiet.
for you.
Okay, or in general, just
you're
maybe
quiet,
not me, any
not
wife.
as responsive.
Not as responsive.
Yeah, when I'm talking to
Looking
you, or,
away.
you tend to clean a little heavier.
That's body language there.
Yes. Maybe walk a little, heavier. Make sure I
Faster.
know that you're
Okay.
you're in the area, but you're not speaking.
For me, less eye contact.
Yeah, less eye contact's a big one.
Maybe be fidgetier. I'm already kind of fidgety, but I'm more fidgetier. Like, the little energy in my body's kind of like wanting to get out. That's the cleaning, or the straightening. Like, I just have to get this energy out in me. But sometimes, I'll say to you, are you mad at me? And I think you're mad at me because you're quiet and you're not looking at me and you're not responsive.
Yeah.
But a lot of times you aren't mad at me.
No. And then I've learned to lead,
What
though.
feeling is that?
Well, that can be sadness or discouragement. Something is triggered or whatever, not to make an excuse there, but I've learned to lead now, to say, hey, and I don't say it this way, but what I'm actually saying is, you may notice my body language
Yes,
is a
saying
little
this.
different, but it has nothing to do with you. This is what I'm dealing with at this moment. So I think that's really important.
Well, and even with the energy level you mentioned there, if I'm moving slower, or I'm less responsive, or I'm not quite as animated, what's wrong? It's like, oh, you're mad, or you're not interested, or you're bored. It's like, no, I'm just really tired.
Yeah.
This is my tired body language, not my bored body language. Like, I'm with you, I hear you, but I just don't have much energy to give you the full listening experience where I'm nodding my head. I'm nodding my head opposite, where it's falling asleep. So exactly, I think those are two things that get confused: bored versus tired. and then mad versus sad.
Yeah. And I think early on, you want to almost fake that, right? If you're, like we were talking about earlier, if you're tired, you kind of want to act interested, but you're tired. So then it's perceived differently. Or if you're sad, but you don't want to talk about it, or you don't want someone to know you're sad, then it's perceived as being mad. And I think in our relationship, it's helped us a lot by leading the way, leading that conversation to say, hey, I am dealing with something right now. It's not you, and I'm not mad. Or I am really tired. You're really good about that, saying, hey, I'm interested in what you're saying. You sound passionate and excited about this, but I'm really tired. So I'm not going to match that level of passion, but it doesn't mean I'm not passionate about it.
Now, our other issue with body language comes in when we're trying to resolve a level of conflict, and one of us is mad-ish or upset. And the body language that you have given me, just starting there, and I'm equal opportunity offender, is, okay, I don't want to deal with it. So, hey, this. And so then again, not just not making eye contact, pushing away, but almost just stiffening up, walking away, body language, right? Walking away, looking away, turning away, leaning away, kind of putting your arms out, even in a physical position, like, put your hands up, like don't attack me, right? Put your hands up. Don't attack me. Don't talk to me about it. Is that right? Your body language, and I'm kind of coming at you and going.
It depends on if there's been body language prior to that where I know that you're upset about something, or it kind of comes out of the blue. But yeah, and it depends on what it is that you want to talk about. I want to talk about something is. If we because we talk all the time, and it's funny because you can talk about just about anything, but when you say you want to talk, then everything changes.
Well,
right?
I think that body language is in that moment where we misread each other too, though, because if I come to you and say, hey, let's resolve this situation, or this is bothering me, and I get that body language, and that alone, that adds another layer to it to go, oh, now I'm sensing that you don't care about me. Now I'm sensing that this isn't important to you. And so then my body language reflects that to go, and I walk away, or I'm like, this. So we kind of end up hurting each other with our messages we're sending that we're not necessarily meaning to send, because I'm going, well, him kind of saying, I don't want to talk about it and pushing me away, like with your body language kind of adds an extra layer to freaking that out.
And I think sometimes you're just interested, you want to be with me and you want my opinion about something, or there's a conflict that you want to resolve, that you just legitimately want to resolve it, where I feel like you want to problem solve it in the sense of saying that it's your fault, Joe, you have to fix it. And so it's working those things through and being able to talk through that body language.
So in the end, though, I think my goal for this episode, and I think we've kind of talked about some of the issues that come into play, is how we use our body language to heal, right? Because I think we can use it to hurt each other, either intentionally hurt each other, we put our hands up, we turn away, we look away, or misread body languages, like, oh, I didn't say that, but you think I did. But I think when we have been intentional to use our body language to heal and to not misread, it makes that conflict so much better and easier to solve. And I think you've made adjustments in that area, and I have, to say, let's not have our body language like make this worse. And so even just that good contact, and the big thing I remember learning is this idea of turning towards you, because I know that when I'm in conflict with you or upset with you, I just immediately want to turn away, like physically speaking, right? Like, I don't want to look at you. Or back in the day, right? Like, you can just slam that phone down, right? Like, you want to cut off contact, just say, I don't want to deal with this. But really saying, I want to turn towards you. How can I not turn away from you and not send that message of you're worthless now and I'm done with you?
Yeah.
Because that's how it comes across sometimes, and we don't like receiving those messages from each other.
Even when we're not saying those things,
right.
That's what can be received. And I think that was a key turning point, like you said, in our marriage, is turning toward each other. And you've been really, really good at this throughout our marriage, of even when I've stiff-armed or said, I don't want to talk about it or whatever, you've always kind of set that posture eventually to turn toward me. And eventually I get around to that as well. And I think once the body language is communicating, hey, the problem's not bigger than you, or the problem's not bigger than us. We can work through this. We can solve this. And the problem isn't as big as we're making it. Then
what have I done body language wise to help communicate that to you? Because I didn't say it. So what did I
Oh, well, you'll sit close to me.
Sit close to you.
You'll grab my hand. Okay. You'll hug me. You'll say, hey, instead of talking about it, can we just cuddle for a little bit? Can we just sit here and just be with each other. Sometimes it's in not sitting close to me, which is interesting. Sometimes it's in sitting not directly across from me, but sitting close to me, but not, giving me a little bit of space. So that communicates that as well.
When I think about the times we've been like walking and working through a tough issue, and again, as we're kind of like finding ourselves in disagreement, we find ourselves kind of like just stepping another centimeter away, like, okay. And then sometimes when we literally tell ourselves, I'm going to hold your hand. And I'm kind of like not liking what you're saying right now. And I don't think we agree on this. And I want to just turn away from you and say, I don't want to talk about this. But when we kind of made ourselves hold our hands while we talk about it, it kind of reinforces to us saying, we're a team. We're going to I still love you, even though I don't like the way this conversation's going. So I feel like that's where the body language really comes in handy when you're having that tense conversation and we make our bodies be polite and loving to each other.
Yeah.
When we reach over and when you reach over and squeeze my hand, I kind of calm down a bit. Or when you've been gentle with me physically, right? Just gentle hand on the shoulder or a little squeeze, or you turn towards me or say, honey, can I give you a hug? It helps just kind of neutralize some of those negative feelings and build that trust, even when we're having a difficult conversation.
I think trust is the key. And there have been plenty times when we're on a walk and one of us doesn't want to hold hands because we are, but the other will just kind of firmly say, no, let's stay connected, even though we're at a place of odds and working this out. And I've often wondered too, because we do work a lot of things out while we walk, which is kind of fun. What do the neighbors think when they see that body language?
They're holding hands, they're not holding hands. They're holding hands, they're not holding hands.
They're holding hands, but they don't look all that happy. What's going on there?
Conversation going. So I think that our body language to communicate that. Even if it's an opposite language of what you might be saying, right? You might be saying, I'm really upset with you, but it almost is not so much saying opposite language, it's trying to neutralize that language.
Yeah.
Like I have something difficult to say, but I don't want to completely push ourselves away. Yeah. I want to still stay connected. I want to pursue connection with you, even though I'm not really feeling like it.
Yeah.
But I think otherwise our body language can make it worse, right?
Yes.
Like I'm going to completely leave the room. I'm going to completely like disengage. I'm going to be harsher with you with our expressions, or our tone of voice or how we stiffen up and make it feel like an argument, make it feel like a fight or, a battle rather than a team working together towards something else.
That's really good. Yeah. And I think what's really been cool and evident in our relationship is as we've pressed into that, even when it didn't feel good or it didn't feel like this is what I want to do, we see the results in developing those habits have helped us recover quicker when conflict does arise.
Because a lot of times that's what I really needed was just like, it wasn't always in your words that bothered me, right? It was the 70%, the 30% words like, okay, we can deal with that. Like this is not the worst thing, but combined with the 70% other body language where I'm receiving these messages of, okay, he doesn't like me, or he thinks I'm wrong, or he thinks this, or he doesn't care about our marriage. I'm hearing all this stuff in the 70% body language. And once you were able to kind of dispel that, then we can deal with the 30% words. Like, okay, what's really going on with the actual conflict and not get it buried under all this other messages we're sending with our nonverbals.
I think it's being curious too. So like there have been times where you've said, are you mad? I'm like, instead of just getting upset about that or frustrated, like you're reading me wrong, ask what about my body language is communicating that to you? Or you look like we're in conversation and you're getting frustrated. I'm like, what's frustrating you? Well, you're not listening. Well, what about me is communicating that I'm not listening? And then that helps me because I was listening. I didn't realize that when I roll my eyes, I'm kidding, but I didn't realize whatever it is that I was doing communicated a non-interested body language. And so I would want to change that.
And I think that's one thing, but body language is not just learning your body language to say, here's what, because yours is different than mine. So I think I would misinterpret you because that's not what I say or do when I'm feeling that way. So that's not fair. But understanding our own body language, like looking at yourself and saying, well, what am I communicating? Because sometimes, you can have a scowl on your face and someone's like, you're mad. Or I think there's like that slouchiness, right? If I feel slouchy, I'm like, oh, I'm slouchy is what kind of message that's sending when I'm slouchy versus sitting up straight. Again, if I'm always listening with my hands crossed, across my chest, what message am I sending? Oh, I'm just comfortable this way. well, yeah, I am comfortable this way, but also is that helping my message get across, or is that hurting my message to get across?
And sometimes I've seen myself on video.
Yes. Oh,
And
exactly.
I'm like, what?
Oh.
I wasn't even upset. Why do I look so upset? Or I wasn't even this. Why do I look that way? Or, wow, that's a goofy look on my. Why
it can be learned though,
yes.
and I think that's what I'm looking. I think about the same thing when I see myself on video. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is the worst thing ever. But going, okay, there are some habits I have with my body language that I can change.
Yeah.
Like not changing who you are, but going, if that's not what I was feeling, okay, can I work on my posture? Can I work on my hands? Can I work on facial expressions are hard. I don't know.
Well, I've been working on trying to smile more,
Yes.
like just smile more in general. But what I've learned about that is it's a totally different body language. So people are like, what are you up to? What are you doing? What are you thinking? So that also can be kind of self-sabotaging if you're not careful. But
yes.
Yeah, it's watching your hands, I think, and then leaning in. I think like turning toward. Those are huge. I can have a frustrated look on my face unintentionally, but if I turn toward you and I look at you and I'm intentionally listening, then it wipes all that out. You don't get that message. You get a message that I'm interested. My face just may not be working.
Well, I think the last thing I like about body language, so there's things that can help us and hurt us, but in the end, it goes back to with JC and Todd, which is having our own personal body language, right? So like language that only me and you understand. Like, okay, when like kind of across the room, right? We're in a room together with other people and you can look at me and I know what you're thinking and you have just little, again, I can't give away all our secrets, but we do have our own little body language to communicate what we need to communicate when we're not talking.
And I love that.
We have to practice that language though. You have to really work on it.
I love it. And there are you have tells about you and
Don't give away my secrets.
No, but I love it. I love when you reveal something about yourself that we're in a crowded room, we're with people, we're wherever, and I know what you're thinking. I know what's going on, and it makes me feel and have an extreme experience of closeness with you, a connection. And I really love that about that's one of the things that I love about our relationship.
That's the hand squeeze, right? When we're holding hands, the little squeeze that no one else knows when we're squeezing and we're saying, hey, I know you know what I'm thinking about this. But I do think we can get our body language to help align our hearts. And it reminds me of, in worship and in prayer that we often change our bodies to match, right? So in worship, if you're lifting your hands, in prayer, if you're folding your hands, bowing your head, or even kneeling, a lot of times we say, oh, it doesn't matter. God can hear you no matter what. Well, of course he can, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes you're like, when you change your body, sometimes it helps get your heart in the right place.
Yeah.
When we bow our heads and close our eyes, it does help us to concentrate better. The times that we say, I need to get in my knees because I need to physically know I need to humble myself right now. So it doesn't change the way God hears us, but I think it changes our hearts as we approach God when we change our bodies, even when they don't want to do those things.
Well, C.S. Lewis was it the Screw Tape Letters, right? Says that the body posture does influence our praying.
Yeah, it says, since we are bodily animal creatures, our desires and aspirations find expression in bodily form. So also the posture we adopt in prayer is an outward and visible expression of our real and not just inward need for God. So it's like, okay, God, I want to worship you with all my words, but also I want my body to be in a place of worship. Even when you don't want to worship, we can still put our hands out and go, this is what I need to do. I'm not feeling it, but I'll have my body do the talking.
Isn't it funny when and the same is true when we're walking down the street holding hands or turning toward each other and pursuing connection. When we don't feel it, all of a sudden, when we begin to tell our bodies, lead our hearts in that direction, right? All of a sudden, then the feelings start to follow. Now, it's not guaranteed that that's going to happen, but that's what we've experienced. And the same is true with worship. If I'm not feeling it, I'm just not experiencing it. If I command my body to get into a posture of worship.
And posture of surrender.
A posture of surrender, humility before God. All of a sudden, it's not very long before I'm starting to be, oh, wow, I'm experiencing this now. And it's not all based on the feeling. And I get that the feeling chases the behavior, but it's that intentional act first. And I've heard this throughout my entire life. I don't even know where the study is at. I'll pull it off the top of my head. But when you smile, when you intentionally smile, you actually move yourself toward a good mood. You find
The
yourself.
muscles help trigger the
it's
hormones.
So
help
interesting
trigger,
that the very act of smiling reduces stress. It does all of those things. So there is some scientific evidence to this idea that if we lead our hearts, if we kind of intentionally lead our bodies.
This is where I want to go. Right.
Yes. First, because the way that I came into marriage was, well, when I feel it, I'll do it. Right. If I feel happy, then I'll look happy. But what if it is the other way around? What if it's, and I'm not saying we have to be fake by any stretch.
I think it helps one leads to the other.
Right. If I look happy,
Right.
or if I smile, or I treat you respectfully and kindly and attentively, then all of a sudden, then the connection starts to happen.
I believe you. I think that's totally true. So the last thing we haven't discussed this episode is the body language that conveys other things, that conveys, I have a sexual interest in you. Yeah. Have I ever expressed that with my body language?
Oh, yeah. That was part of those tells I was telling you about. Yeah.
We'll hit that next time.
All right.
Let's do it.
Would love to hear what makes you smile about your husband or wife. Would love to hear about your thoughts on body language as well.
Does it help, or how has it helped your marriage? And how is it fun?
You have a story I can tell. You can email us anytime, Tara, T-A-R-A, @behindoursmiles.com. Thanks again for joining us today. We'll see you again next week.